Hello and welcome. I'm Bill Morrow of ECS, and today we're going to be taking a quick overview of how stratification works, how you can pull your data into an easy to use dashboard, and then ultimately how your company can use that data and use the dashboard so you can get the results you're looking for on a day-to-day basis. So I'd like to introduce our two leaders today, our two speakers. We're going to start with Chris Lee, who's the managing partner at ECS, where he leads the business process and operations excellence teams. He's had years of experience leading large groups of teams and large groups, and he attributes a lot of his year-over-year growth to stratification and the ability to understand how that data helps your business. Joining Chris today is Barb Danini, who is the president at Boxplot Analytics, where she leads her team of data scientists and analysts in supporting their customers' use of their company's data in order to make smarter business decisions. Our agenda today is going to be pretty straightforward here. We're going to start with an introduction to customer stratification and dashboard, and just kind of a refresher if you haven't seen it in a while or you're interested in learning a little bit more. We're going to jump into the four-step customer process, stratification process, and then we're going to look on how to develop the customer stratification model. Once all of that's completed, we're going to look at a case study to show you what success looks like and what some future dashboards might look like for you. And then obviously we want to, with anything that you're looking at from a business standpoint, take a look at what the outcomes and return on investment is. With that said, I'm going to hand it over to Chris Lee, and we'll go from there. Chris?
Thanks, Bill. So how do we wrap our heads around the new normal? If you go back 3 to 5 years ago, customer stratification and dashboarding was primarily a Fortune 500 focus. Today, with technology and cost decreasing, the middle market can leverage the same tools that Fortune 500 companies utilize to drive results. Customer stratification is industry agnostic and can be conducted on all sizes of customer bases. Customer stratification reviews your customer base using a set of objective, fact-based metrics. The analyst allows you to focus on sales and marketing efforts on those customers who promise the greatest upside potential. In our experience, companies have found that intentional, targeted sales and marketing efforts made possible by customer stratification analysis often leads to a significant increase in revenues and boost profits. It's long established business standard that the most direct path to increasing revenues is to discover more opportunity within your existing customer base that enhances your customer relationships. Stratification also provides data to create customer-focused sales strategies that can turn low-margin outlier customers into high-margin customers, significantly improving cash flow. Research suggests that the depth of relationship is critical to companies' growth and ultimate survival. Not all customers are the same. Finally, customer stratification increases your team's productivity, whether it's a CEO, sales consultant, account executives, or marketing team, to make better use of their time by quickly identifying opportunities that exist for your customers and their business. So where does customer data come from? So what you're looking at here is, here's some common business applications: ERP, business intelligence tool, or customer relationship management tools that we frequently work with. But we also work with many customized applications. How do we stratify our customers? Typically, customers will create a team of 3 to 4 members to lead, train, develop, and implement customer stratification. Customer stratification is a 4-step process. So step 1, identify key indicators or business drivers. Narrow those down to the top 10 to 15. Step 2 would be add 3 levels of thresholds in scoring, for example. So one example of that would be, what is good, better, or best in your business? Step 3, transition the model from Excel to BI. Scrub your databases, test and verify the data, and build a BI model. Step 4, operationalize and train the team. This step should not be overlooked. Many leaders, many times, can't wait to get going. I assure you, this step is where the magic of customer stratification happens. Everyone on your team should know what's expected and understand how to access the team and the tool fully so that the results in the transformation will follow. Step 1, key business indicators. Business measures or drivers is measurable resources that drives performance to achieve maximum profits for a business. Identify the top 3 or 4 measurables in revenue, profitability, cost to serve, and loyalty. All drivers must be quantifiable, measurable, high level, and high impact. I've highlighted a few of the cornerstones in this slide. Test and verify the drivers. It's imperative to test and verify each before proceeding to the model. For example, site revenue, highlighted above, did not make the cut because the data could not be quantifiable or reliable. So the metric was deemed not viable. Drivers must have data that is available or currently tracked in your ERP or another application. Must be quantifiable in units, dollars, percentages. Must be reliable, meaning the data is tracked manually or by an application not linked to your ERP. The final step is to put each driver through root cause analysis to ensure the viability, but also to determine the stack ranking to impact and narrow down the list from, let's say, your top 15 down to 10 or 12 drivers. Driver output. So once you've reduced it to 10 or 12 to ensure maximum impact and also not to dilute the scoring, it's not uncommon for drivers to change from year to year. Some drivers, for example, revenue and profit, though, will become cornerstones of the stratification model for years to come. The next step is to put the drivers into the appropriate classification, as you see highlighted here: volume, profitability, cost to serve, and loyalty in the model. Step 2 is where you add the thresholds and the weighted values. So there's 3 levels of thresholds that should reflect good, meaning red, better, meaning yellow, best being green. Thresholds must be quantifiable and should provide a high level, high impact metric, which will have a substantial role in determining the business outcomes. Scoring and weights are dynamic and should be frequently tightened with progress. Here you're seeing the Excel model in its full effect. The finalized model combines drivers with qualified weights and metrics to determine the customer score. On the far right here, you will see the scores of particular customers identified on the far left. The scoring is for internal use and should never be shared with customers. The customer scores are put into 4 buckets of stratification, which are indicated up here in the far right of the slide: core customer, opportunistic, marginal, and service drain. Barb will go into those deeper later in the presentation. The goal of stratification is to shift the customers from red to yellow to green, or changing customer behaviors and outcomes for your organization. Here is step 3. This is a flow chart that shows and demonstrates the transition from Excel to your BI program, taking the drivers, moving that through your customer base, mapping the drivers through the ERP and applications into a BI program, which then gives you outputs in data and reports. I'll now turn the presentation over to Barb, and she'll walk you through steps 3 and 4 of customer stratification.
Thanks so much, Chris. I appreciate it. So yeah, let's talk a little bit more about step 3, this transition to BI. And I'm sure many of you already know that stands for business intelligence. And you've probably heard of several business intelligence tools. You might not have associated them with that phrase, but Tableau is a business intelligence tool, Power BI, Click. These are all more powerful tools than Excel that can be used to really drill down and do pretty amazing things with the data. So the first slide here shows what we just saw a couple slides ago in Excel, but transitioned to BI. And this is just one example of how we can take what we did in Excel, pull it into a BI program. It looks better. We can add slicers like we see at the top there to make it more dynamic and customizable, but we can even go further than this. This slide shows another example of how we can dig even deeper into the data with a BI tool. This dashboard shows the customers on the whole, their characteristics, where they currently stand in terms of the customer stratification scoring. So we can see from the side-by-side pie charts and the KPI numbers and the bar chart. And again, there's so many different options of what we can put in there, all this information in one place in a really easily understandable way. And again, we can really customize this to your organization's needs depending on what KPIs are important to you. I want to go through one more example dashboard here too, because this is another great one, which is tracking against specific goals. And again, we have goals that we recommend as part of stratification, but these are also totally customizable. So you can see where your customers currently stand in relation to these goals and what you need to do to kind of nudge them towards the goal if they're not already there. So in that top left chart, for example, we see that the black bar shows where we want to be in the good column, and that tiny little thin green bar shows where we actually are. So unfortunately, we're not meeting our goal for that yet, but this was just the start, right? This is before the stratification has happened, and we know now where we need to go. I'll also note that data in all of these BI tools can be updated automatically and really at any interval desired, even down to the minute. We can also do quarterly and annual reviews to make sure all the metrics are still relevant and that the dashboard continues to serve the needs of your particular organization. So as Chris mentioned, I wanted to come back to these 4 categories and talk a little bit more about those, because that's really the goal of what we're getting out of, well, one of the goals of what we're getting out of the BI program. So the core group, this is your best group. This group is very loyal. They're your profitable customers. Their cost to serve is very low. And typically they comprise about 10 to 20% of your total customer base, but 80 to 90% of your profitability. So this is your best group. Opportunistic is the next tier down. They're very profitable still. They have a low cost to serve as well, but they don't buy much from you, and maybe they aren't loyal or short tenured. The service train group is the next category down. They have a decent sales volume and loyalty typically, but they've beaten you down on pricing and they have a high cost to serve. And then finally, your worst customers are bucketed into the marginal group. Their revenue is low, their loyalty is poor, they still somehow beat you down on price, and they have a high cost to serve. You might even lose money on every single transaction with these customers. So once we've grouped everyone into one of these 4 categories, what's next? Well, of course, we want to try to get them into better categories if they're in one of the worst categories. And there's some techniques that we can talk about that you can use to shift them into a more desirable bucket. And then, of course, meet goals like boosting profitability. Let's start with the core group, though, because they're as high as it can get. right? The goal for the core group is just about protecting them. They're your core for a reason. Everyone at your company should know who they are. If a call comes in from one of your core customers, it should be responded to fast. There is still some opportunity to improve the scores of this group, but it really depends on the certain circumstances of the particular customer. It's not as generalized as the other groups. Your opportunistic group is the group from which your next group of core customers is most likely to come. So this is a good group of customers, especially for targeted marketing efforts. You want to focus marketing efforts on them to try to get them to become core. And part of those marketing goals might be broadening how many SKUs that they're currently buying or increasing their purchase frequency. The service train and marginal customers are not as likely to transition straight to core, of course. That's a little bit too aggressive. But if you're successful in improving their profile, they could go into the opportunistic bucket, or if they're marginal, into the service train bucket. There is a possible chance you might even consider eliminating one of the marginal customers, but that really should be an absolute last resort. It's typically far less difficult to improve an existing marginal customer than it is to win a brand new customer that you don't already have. Alrighty, so now that we've broken down the data, we went through the BI tool, let's talk about the last step, step 4. We can offer executive support for the stratification initiative to your team members as well. And like Chris said, this is a really important part of the process. It's crucial that your team can slice and dice the data in the BI tool as well, so that they can get the most out of the process. We'll train them on the tool of your choice and the mechanics of the stratification. And then we can also integrate the stratification into your existing processes, such as your point of sale system, your customer service data, or your financial metrics. And then we can also talk about how to tie team member goals into the stratification. So for example, bonuses and incentives can be tied to the success of the stratification. Team members can even get into the habit of reviewing a customer's data and stratification profile before contacting them to set an agenda for a call. So now that we've gone through all 4 steps in theory, let's look at an actual case study of a stratification project that we did with a professional services company. This company had about 8,600 active clients, and it was a company that really did not pay much attention to its smaller customers and exclusively focused on its largest customers. That's not necessarily a bad thing by itself, but it was not really helping them grow. They were just kind of holding steady and weren't experiencing that meaningful growth that they wanted. This is anonymized data from that customer, and you can see that, and this was at the start of the stratification, most of these metrics are on the low end. So if you look at the bar chart on the left, we've got big bars in the B, C, and D categories, and not as many in the A or over 100,000 in revenue category, which is where we would want to be, A and B. The pie chart on the right shows a different look at the same customer base, same data, but through a different, broader lens of stratification. The revenue metric is still evaluated as part of stratification, but stratification is much broader. It doesn't just look at revenue. It considers profitability and cost to serve, and it's really a holistic weighted customer scoring, and that is associated with those 4 buckets we talked about before. So you can see in the pie chart, this company started out with quite a few marginal customers. That gray slice is over 50% of the pie, and that's not where we want to be. We want to move those customers. So after working with them and after stratifying and operationalizing that stratification, what were we able to achieve? Well, the company really focused its marketing efforts in a much less random manner now that they had this information. It directed attention towards growing a select group of customers and shifting them from that giant marginal bucket to opportunistic, and some actually even moved into the core group. This paid dividends pretty quickly, with improvements in both top-line revenue of $8.2 million for this group, and also in margins, which increased by 300 basis points over just 1 year. That kind of improvement in both top line and bottom line is not easy to achieve in a year, and it was really this focused stratification approach that allowed it. It was instrumental in getting them there. So these are just some other examples of outcomes of stratification. It's not always just about revenue or marginal basis points. You can see there's a lot of different goals that companies might have that they want to achieve with stratification. These are real world examples of things that we've helped people do through stratification and operationalizing that plan. And these real world examples straddle a very broad array of industries, everything from manufacturing, distribution, food services. The approach is truly sector agnostic. Stratification offers a data-driven approach so that your organization can make smarter customer-based decisions that have meaningful outcomes like increased profit, faster growth, lower costs, and the things that you see here. Thank you for listening to our presentation. And if you have any further questions or want to chat with us about stratification, you can find Chris and my information on the slide here.